Does VGK have an advantage playing in a no income tax state? That's coming up next, right here on this edition of Locked On Golden Knights.
You're Locked On Golden Knights, your daily podcast on the Vegas Golden Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi again, everyone. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick from Las Vegas. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You could find us wherever you get your podcast, and please subscribe to our Locked On Golden Knights YouTube channel. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. We've got an NFL Monday night game. We'll tell you what the odds are later on. Go to FanDuel.com. So, Chris, VGK is one of 4 teams out of the past 5 years that has won the Stanley Cup from states that have teams that play without having to pay state income tax. Tampa Bay won in 2021 and 20 and 21, I should say. VGK in 2023. Florida won the Cup this past year. NHL teams that play in Nevada, like VGK, in states like Florida, in Tennessee, in Texas, in Washington, they have an advantage, a decisive advantage, if you will. Jonathan Marchessault went from one no-tax state here in Nevada to Tennessee, another. So that had to factor in, right? Chandler Stevenson did the same, going up to the state of Washington. And so pretty interesting for the Golden Knights. And yes, they do have some sort of an advantage. And this should be a reason why VGK should be attracting a lot of these players that are free agents, especially. I think that's where we should start. Is there an advantage for the Vegas Golden Knights?
No doubt there's an advantage. I mean, if I'm going to get paid $10,000 to do a job in state A, or if I'm going to get paid $12,000 to do the same job in state B, obviously I know where I'd rather do that work. Obviously, family and movie. There's a lot more that goes to it, but we're also not normal people like NHL athletes when it comes to their financial situations and how much easier it might be for them to kind of go from point A to point B on a moment's notice. A little harder for me and Tony and probably most of the people listening to this podcast to do that. So is there an advantage? Absolutely, there's going to be an advantage. But how big is the advantage? I mean, obviously, we're going to look at Stanley Cup champions of the past and see how big the advantage is. The recent Stanley Cup winners, Florida, Vegas, Tampa. That's 4 of the last 5. Colorado's in the middle. Colorado is not one of those states. And then you got the St. Louis Blues, which is, again, not one of those states. Washington, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Los Angeles Kings, Boston Bruins, Detroit Red Wings, Anaheim. We're going all the way back to 2004 again, if I'm reading this right, to win a team without that state income tax won a Stanley Cup. So on paper, is there an advantage? And is the Stanley Cup the only measuring stick? No, of course not. You're going to look at which teams are, making the playoffs and obviously making deep runs. But at face value, absolutely, there is an advantage. I mean, I don't know what the math works out to be, maybe somewhere in the 15 to 25% ballpark, depending on your tax bracket, how that transfers to people making 7-8 figures a year. I don't know about that, but yeah, definitely an advantage for any of these teams that play in states without the state income tax.
Canadian teams, they are playing at a major disadvantage. And you went back and you talked about all those teams, Chris, but of late, yes, 4 of the last 5 have been Stanley Cup champions. So maybe that's starting to really take shape, and this is something we're going to have to keep.
Why now? Why just now all of a sudden? Like, are these players just getting smarter now? Like they're starting to get the advice to go there? I mean, what's the difference now than it was 10 years ago?
I think that's part of it. Great point. I really do think that's a part of it. And if I'm their agent, I'm first looking at those no tax states. Absolutely.
All day, of course.
Canadians, they have to overpay players. Maybe this is perhaps, as you talk about a deep dive, maybe this is one of the reasons why Canadian teams aren't winning Stanley Cups. I mean, think about it. Should they have a higher salary cap in Canada and in those states that have no income tax? I think so. I think they should.
I mean, okay, so you posed 2 questions. One, why is Canada not winning Stanley Cups? And I mean, you can't tell me sometime going back to Montreal in 95, whenever it was, 93, pardon me, that one of these states couldn't have dummied their way to a Stanley Cup championship. I don't know. When, only a few teams going back to 1993 have actually won Stanley Cups from these states. So, I mean, I don't know if that's the only reason. Does that play? Of course that plays. I mean, there's other reasons people need to be overpaid to play in places like Calgary and Winnipeg as well. Let's just kind of be honest with ourselves for a second here. The second question you posed is, what does the NHL do? Do they have a variable Stanley Cup? The Golden Knights Stanley Cup, stays at 88 million, whatever it's going to be this year, but the Toronto Maple Leafs now have a $96 million Stanley Cup. I don't know if that's the right number. I'm just throwing numbers out there at this point. I don't know. And how you do all of that would be very, very interesting. Do you simply penalize any team that goes over the Stanley Cup and say, okay, the $88 million is what you can spend, but if you want to spend $100 million, you got to pay an additional 20% in penalties to wherever that money would end up going. I don't know. That's a very interesting topic. I don't think there is any any reasonable solution besides what the NHL does. I mean, it would be really interesting to say, okay, well, Toronto, you get 96 million. Nashville, you get 88 million. Vegas, you get 88 million. Calgary, you're going to get 99 million because the bracket's a little different. Like that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to the NHL, so the deputy commissioner, Bill Daly, was here at Media Days last week here in town, and he said that the NHL doesn't have a solution. But they're going to have to. This is something I think that is really going to be. It's going to become a major topic. It has to be, because especially if this upcoming year you get one of those teams in a no income tax state that wins it, I think then you really have to do a deep dive and you have to examine what the effects are. I think that there is an impact now. And as we go up the scale, too, keep in mind with a salary cap, Chris, I think that's when it's going to show, I think, some major advantages. I really do. I really do.
I'm looking just at the recent Stanley Cup winners. I'm not screwing around on YouTube right now or anything like that. But
You're not?
I mean, I don't think so. At least I don't know. But looking at the recent winners, absolutely, Florida, Vegas, Tampa.
And then they talked about Dallas in this Matt Larkin interview from the Daily Faceoff. He talked about Dallas and, of course, Texas, one of those states.
Yeah,
and their impact of late.
Yeah, no, I get it, and it wasn't a problem until all of a sudden the non-income state tax states start winning all of a sudden. Like it's a very the NHL kind of talking out both sides of their mouth. They want these teams in these markets and things like that. We're talking obviously about newer teams as well. Tampa was obviously a part of expansion. Sometime 90s, something like that. Florida Panthers, same thing. Obviously, Vegas Golden Knights, very recent. Seattle Kraken, very recent as well. So, and in Dallas Stars, I mean, they relocated as well. So, I mean, again, these are all just kind of moving and fluid situations here. And yes, teams are winning now, obviously, in these non-income tax states. If that continues, sure, I guess everyone's going to start crying foul. But what's the solution, Tony? Throw something. Pick something out really fast. What's the solution?
I'm just going to go where I started. I think that they need to expand the salary cap, make it higher, and make it commensurate to what they are paying for the states that have no income tax, so that it balances out. So figure out what the formula is, how much they are saving these players, and then adjust the salary cap accordingly. Because as this continues to go up, and if you're a free agent, number one, you're going to want to perhaps play in a warm weather state, aka Nevada, aka Florida, definitely Florida. Tennessee is pretty moderate, right? Texas, moderate. Number one. Number two, obviously, you get to take home a larger chunk of change if you're living and working in those states. It just makes sense. And if I'm a free agent, that's exactly where I'm going to start to look, is how can I make the most money, and then also retain the most money as well. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, Tony.
No, does that make sense?
Oh, no, it definitely makes sense, Tony. You're not wrong. It's, we've identified a problem. We don't necessarily have a perfect solution by any means, and I
But
have
it's
no
better than
clue
the
how.
NHL saying we don't have any solution.
Yeah, no, I should work for the NHL. It'd be great. But I pay a bunch of people to do my taxes for me, and I can assure you that if I lined up 10 different qualified businesses that do taxes in and around Nevada, and I presented them all 10 of these businesses my paperwork, all 10 of these businesses are going to give me different numbers. There's not a world that exists where all 10 of these businesses are going to say, okay, here's what you owe, or here's what you're getting in a return, and it's going to match to within $10, $100. We'll just leave a little margin of error in there. So my point is that there are so many different tax professionals and people finding breaks for me and you and professional athletes and teachers and first responders and salespeople, whatever. Their job is obviously to save people money and represent them when it comes to taxes and everything. So how do you find this perfect number? Okay, if you're in the Vegas Golden Knights will have a 20% less salary cap than any team that is in these tax income states. Well, I don't know income tax states. I don't know if that's the right way either, because there's so many things that people do for write-offs and returns.
But in
It gets a little
Canada,
kinky at times, if you will. But how do you make a flat number? Like, I don't know.
in Canada, though, they're having to now pay players more money because of it. So it's a major issue, I think.
Yes and no, Tony. You look
And
at,
like
I mean,
Draisaitl, like what's he going to take home? About $10 after the Canadian
$26 to play with the greatest player in the world. But yeah, listen, I get all that, and I understand everything. But also, there's the Flames. I mean, when have the Flames been competitive in the last 30 years? Like I say, competitive, a team that could possibly. I think they had one conference final run, maybe. Did they play Edmonton a while back, or maybe it was whatever? Point being is, it's not just that. It'd be like if the Buffalo Sabres, and again, I'm not knocking the Sabres, it's just low-hanging fruit and an easy target right now. It'd be like if the Buffalo Sabres were in a no state income tax states. Would that change their situation?
Yes,
I don't think so. No.
Absolutely. It would.
Sabres have a $200 million contract. They'd find a way to screw it up, Tony. Now I'm knocking them.
Okay. Coming up next, Tomas Hertl says that he is going to be a lot better this year. Stay tuned. More on the way right after this on Locked On Golden Knights. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, don't forget that we have a little bit different, something different for you coming up here until September the 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial subscription to NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV to watch all of those upsets like we saw yesterday. Then with the YouTube plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need to do is have a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Coming up tonight, we do have Monday Night Football. Latest odds coming up from FanDuel for tonight's game. The Eagles, a 5.5-point favorite over Atlanta, and the total on tonight's game is 46. For more info, for all the props, everything else ahead, go to FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back on this edition of Locked On Golden Knights, Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick reporting from Las Vegas. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, Fridays are WTF with the Fridays, Saturdays, sometimes the Chris and Chris Jr. show. All those upsets yesterday in the NFL. Big.
Are there anyone left in the survivor pool out there?
I'm telling you, they had to get crushed. I mean, by far.
Imagine if the Bengals would have won too yesterday. Imagine if the Bengals would have won that game.
And they could have. Obviously, late field goal beats them, right? At the closing
little
gun.
DPI people are arguing about too, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
they are arguing.
I had them on teaser, so I survived that one, thankfully, with that field goal. I had minus a half a point on the teaser.
The Raiders, congratulations here in Vegas to the Raider Nation.
Yeah, that's
pretty good. I don't
That's
root
a teaser
for
that I lost, by the way.
I'm not a fan of the Raiders, but I do cover the team, and I'd like to see them win for our city's sake. So there you
And
go.
I hear that a lot about you, Tony. What team do you cover that you are a fan of? UNLV.
UNLV,
There you
yeah,
go. UNLV.
UNLV, yeah.
Locked on
Tom,
Rangers. You guys hiring?
no, but I don't dislike the Raiders. I don't dislike the Raiders. Tomas Hertl told the Hockey News that he wasn't himself and he's going to be a lot better this year. Of course, acquired at the trade deadline. He was coming off of that surgery and finally made his first appearance back on April the 8th against the Canucks. And 38 points between the Sharks and Las Vegas in the past season. Can Hertl still produce like he did if we turn back the clock to 2018-19, Chris, when he scored 74 points? Does he still have that in him?
I mean, sure, why not? I mean, obviously health, and there's a lot of things that need to play out. We've seen players come to Vegas and have success. Now we're taking a vet of over 700 NHL regular season games and nearly 70 playoff games. Can he absolutely find that gear? Without a doubt, he can find it. It's interesting scrolling through this hockey news article here about this, and there's a related content. Should Hertl play center or wing? And then the other thing that I saw when I was scrolling through this article,
I missed that.
Yeah, I saw it. Might be just my, but might have been
he's
Google
not
it.
a winger. He's not, even if Cassidy wants him. He's not a winger.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know. We're going to find out Thursday or Friday when the camp opens and how he lines up at least. The other thing about Hertl that I saw when I was scrolling through was on my phone this morning, but it was a 19-year-old Tomas Hertl scoring his fourth goal in an 8-2 rout of somebody. But he did it between the legs, a la William Karlsson back in 2018 in the opening season like they did against the Sharks, actually, as oddly as that sounds. So I can imagine Hertl had to answer for that one. But listen, everything we're hearing about Hertl is good right now, and why shouldn't it be? I mean, obviously, last year was what it was from a health perspective. I still maintain that he probably would not have played any more games last year had he stayed with the San Jose Sharks. Then they would have shut him down, obviously, and let him heal up. He gave it everything he had in Vegas, and I think he did make an impression, Tony. I mean, 4 points in 6 regular season games, and then obviously the playoffs, not a lot happening there, but net front presence, very good at faceoffs, going to be great on the power play. 5-on-5. Again, this is where I got dragged by a couple of fans. I hope it's rightfully so. I was concerned about his 5-on-5 game, and a lot of people came to his defense saying how good he is as far as puck possession, board battles, and things like that. So on paper, there's a lot to like about Hertl. Health, of course, and it's not just Hertl, it's all the Vegas Golden Knights. Health is obviously a number one concern, but getting past that, health and chemistry, Tony, there we go. There's the two buzzwords coming this season. Health and chemistry. If Hertl could be on the right side of both of those, can he get back to scoring a point every 75% of his games for a nice 55 to 63 point season? That would be great. That'd be awesome.
Bruce Cassidy talked some yesterday between the first and second periods of the Rookie Faceoff, which had the worst angles ever, if you were trying to watch that. And he said that
it's not VGK's fault. It's a small arena.
But they put them down in like the left corner. And so when the puck was away, and I'll talk about that in the third segment today, but
that'd be Friday, but sure.
When it was down in the other zone on the far side, you couldn't follow the puck. There's no way. So yesterday during the Rookie Faceoff, Bruce Cassidy declared both Stone and Hertl healthy. So going into the season, something that I thought of yesterday, did this extended summer help the health factor for players like Hertl? Right?
They helped everybody.
They had a long summer, right?
I mean, listen, last season kind of sucked. Call it what it is. I've said what I've said about the playoff series and things like that. I still maintain that. But looking past all of that, I mean, even if the Vegas Golden Knights would have found a way to get out of that first round series, would they have gotten that much better to make a Stanley Cup run? We'll never know. I mean, is it likely? Probably not. Is it possible? Of course it would have been. Looking past all of that, this is a lot of parallels to the team that won the Stanley Cup. They had an extended offseason. They did not qualify for the playoffs, and all of a sudden, basically that same team plus Phil Kessel comes back and wins a Stanley Cup. Obviously, a lot more things happened and moves and situations, which will happen this season, depending on, okay, fine, injuries, LTIR, and then more importantly, just what type of situations present itself for general manager Kelly McCrimmon. So a long off season, a pissed off Golden Knights team with a chip on their shoulder. Mark Stone chirping the media everywhere he can about being written off and things like that. It's the setup is there right now. The setup is there. It's we're talking about a team one season removed from a Stanley Cup championship coming in pissed off with something to prove. That's they have nothing to prove, but if they feel they have something to prove, that's not a bad thing. And it sounds like Mark Stone is going to be Jonathan Taves. They always called Jonathan Taves in Chicago Captain Serious. I think Mark Stone's going to be Captain Serious this year. I think it's going to be very business, very by the book. You're not going to get a lot of interviews from Mark Stone throughout the season, kind of chuckling and having those goofy Jonathan Marchessault type of moments. I think it's going to be very serious, and I think Mark Stone's going to do everything he can to lead this team back to where he feels it should be.
Didn't one of your favorite PTO targets sign elsewhere? Kevin LeBlanc,
LeBlanc, New Jersey, and they're all saying they did it so they can get to the vet minimum, basically. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what ends up happening there with him. Was he a favorite target? I don't know about that.
It was your favorite
was he a
target.
good scratcher, a good lottery ticket when you're at the gas station in a lottery eligible state? I think states with lotteries have an advantage, Tony.
Okay, I don't bet a ton here in this state and in Las Vegas. But I'll make that first stop and buy like $50 of the scratch off cards for some reason as soon as I'm over the border. Unbelievable.
Scratch offs are a $1 or $2 scratch off ticket is cheaper than pulling a stupid slot machine right now. All the min bets on slot machines keep going way up right now. It kind of sucks. And buy a bonus. What the heck is with that? Okay, sorry.
Okay, coming up next, we will move on from our gaming advice to talk about VGK rookies, the rookie faceoff. The update next, right here on Locked On Golden Knights. Welcome back on this edition of Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick reporting from Las Vegas. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to our Locked On Golden Knights YouTube channel. Friday is WTF. We're supposed to be back allegedly on our normal schedule, right? 5 days a week. I think that starts today officially, although we've been doing
4.5 days a week since
4.25
since the off season.
Since the off season, the entire off season. No, we just there's so much content to share with everyone, so that's cool. And then today you have something that you're recording, aren't you? Today?
Yeah, we're going to do a Pacific roundtable of the four. They're Locked On is dividing each of the divisions up to a roundtable. The four teams that qualified for the playoffs, we made the cut, to the four teams that did not qualify for the playoffs. So I'll be on with the Kings.
Okay. Edmonton.
The
Sharks.
No.
That's right. Who else? Of course, you'll be on with Vancouver.
There we go. It's been a long morning.
Okay, so you'll be
I'm going off. Hold on, Tony. I'm going to start at what the Monday test.
You are the favorite because you're in a no income tax state.
Yes, I will make sure to point that out today.
Make sure you point that out.
I don't want to get political. I'm not going to say who said this because maybe they don't want the PR, but I met Jack today. Nice guy, even though I'm disappointed in his political choices. Doesn't stop me from liking him as a player. No, disappointed does not equal freaking out. I will admit I couldn't look him in the eye. Just enjoy hockey. Just enjoy hockey. That's all I'm going to say. Just separate the two. Enjoy the hockey. Okay, moving on.
You're saying politics and
sports.
Just got you.
I'm enjoy hockey. Enjoy hockey.
I don't care who anyone endorses or what they talk about.
I don't agree with 90% of the crap that comes out of Tony's mouth. I'm still there every day.
Okay, so let's get back on track here. The VGK Rookie Faceoff is going on in El Segundo, where I left my wallet. Of course, you know that song. VGK plays one final rookie game today, Monday, 12:30 Pacific time against Utah. VGK, a team that is 2-0. And Friday night, the big story there, I think, that was Jakob Demek was injured in the first period and has not returned. So hopefully he's okay because he's one of the future stars, brighter stars for VGK. VGK beat the Kings 2-0. Jacob Brabinitz scored on the power play goal, surprisingly. And Braden Bowman also had the insurance goal. But the story there, so they split the two goaltenders right on Friday night, and Jesper Vikman and Carl Lindbaum took turns at the net. Lindbaum came in late in the game, and they shared the net. And I watched the third period with the funky angles, and you can't tell what's going on the
It's a
other end
small
of the
building. I'm
ice.
watching highlights right now. It's a real
And so
small
that's where
building.
Lindbaum was based, was on, like, if you're watching it, he's on the right side. You cannot see a thing. You have to go just based on rumors and what have you. So the third period, he does turn away a few shots. I saw a couple of those, and he did a good job. Stood tall in net. The best part of the night, he tried to score a goalie goal on an empty net attempt. And I will say, yes, it was an attempt. Some people said it was a pass, just trying to clear the zone. It was intercepted, but hey, for once, I'm siding with the VGK fans and the homers. He did try to score the empty netter. That was fun.
Let's have some fun here. The chances that any of these players are seen wearing a VGK uniform come October, we'll obviously see how that ends up shaking out. Low, but maybe a couple of these guys could. It's about what are these guys going to bring down the road. I think the thing that stood out to me was our favorite, apparently now, Joe Fleming, dropping the gloves with a 6'7" combatant for the Los Angeles Kings, and
6'7".
Yeah, Fleming don't care. Fleming, he's gonna be a leader at some point if his game develops, and it just seems like he kind of has that. He has it. I don't know what else to say besides Fleming just kind of seems to have it when it comes to the charisma and things like that. And things like that are important. It's confidence. It's not being afraid to stand up for your teammates. It's not being afraid to stand up to someone who's, twice your size and has a reach 9 inches longer than you do, and you're going to get hit a few times. So it'll be really fun to watch Fleming's progression if he can maybe become a regular in Henderson this year. I'm not sure if his contract possibly allows for that, but I think that, might be a nice goal for him, at least to get some time in Henderson. Maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, we're talking about Fleming as a defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights, and that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. That, of course, was Parker Jones, 6'7" Parker Jones of the Kings, who also had a late cross check when I was watching that game. And then yesterday, VGK hangs on for a 5-3 win. They were leading this game yesterday 4-0, Chris. And Lindbaum had the net to himself, playing really well. Then all of a sudden, 1 goal, 2 goals. They scored the third, and then VGK with a late empty netter to secure that. They blew that 4-0 lead. Brobinitz again with the goal. I saw Jacob Matthew with a shorthanded goal for the VGK rookies. And today, that net will be Jesper Vikman. So he'll be a net today. So they wanted to split one game, and then each goaltender got a singular game. So that's cool. So we'll see how Vikman fares today. Again, 12:30 face-off time, and they'll be taking on Utah. One of the other
is that the end of it? Is it the last game today?
Yeah, today's the last game, thankfully. Yeah, I was getting nauseous. Well, but that cameraman can also, there's a feature on that camera called zoom. You could sort of like zoom in on the other end of the ice, I think, at times. There was another game yesterday. Have to point out.
Now he's using a phone camera as old as yours.
So my flip phone has a better zoom in feature, perhaps, than that camera. Quentin Musty yesterday, a hat trick in a rookie league game for San Jose. There's one team that I think is in dire straits across the board on every level, and that's the Anaheim Ducks. I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble this year. Will they lose 7-2 in a rookie game? How could you give up 7 goals in a stinking rookie game?
Who cares?
On that note,
who cares? That's the best thing. I mean, don't put too much stock into the rookie games or the outcomes or the goals that goalies are letting in. Obviously, it's about the team looking at their individual. It's a lot more individual. Call it what it is. A lot more individual mechanics and where they fit in the system that they're running for these games, ability to adapt and things like that. And it gives the it gives Ryan Craig, who will see these guys a lot more, obviously, a little more visibility. And, they kind of begin that relationship. That's what matters. Those are the things that matter. And every now and then someone does stick out, and maybe they do become an NHLer much quicker than anticipated. And those are great stories when that happens.
Yeah, and Ryan Craig, after yesterday's game, just saying he didn't like that his team had blown that 4-0 lead. Score was 4-3 and getting a little dicey, but he wanted to also see how his team responded under those adverse conditions, and they pulled out the game, scored the Sapovalitz, the late goal there, empty netter. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you so much. Of course, coming up Friday, WTF. Saturday, it's the Chris and Chris Jr. show. Sometimes it's tentative. It's
getting
tentative
closer.
for the Saturday.
Getting closer. The
Okay.
build up, man. This first show better be huge.
This better be a pretty much big time show.
Maybe we should have the town crier on a special guest.
Yeah, you'll lose one viewer. Of course, for my man, Chris Golick, I am Tony Cardasco from Las Vegas. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow right here on Locked On Golden Knights. And please take care.